Thank you for joining me. My name is Timothy Halloran. We're speaking about a Gemini full moon, December 7th, 2022. I'm dropping this just a couple days before. Folks, there's a lot going on. This is a tense full moon. And again, as I mentioned at the start of my last video, I'm right there with you in it. So thanks for bearing with me as I do my best to break apart these collective dynamics affecting the whole planet, where each and every individual will be having a unique experience simultaneously. Okay, so I can't say this is all true for you, but generally, this is what's happening in our world. This is a period of collective dis-ease. It is uncomfortable. We're getting pushed beyond our limits. We are transforming, and where this transmutation is occurring, we could say, is at the basement level or the underworld. So our recent solar eclipse in Scorpio was the crash and burn all the way to the new moon in Sagittarius, and now we're starting the work of building a new structure that's going to take us through springtime of 2023, where we are rebirthing our fundamental orientation to what's around us. Now, what's really highlighting the full moon in Gemini on the 7th is the fact that it's nearly exactly joined Mars, who is now retrograde and going through the sign of Gemini. So Mars retrograde is this whole period of exploring the different pieces, parts, people, interests of our own life, of our own multifaceted, multi-composite being. And it's like each and every one of us is playing the phone operator game of connecting different pieces, different people, different opportunities, and we're discovering what works through a trial and error. One of the most important mantras for this period is it is not failure, it is feedback. We're firing arrows at a target. We want some of those arrows to hit. We want some of those arrows to miss. Whether the arrows hit or miss, it is all feedback. It is all useful information. Gemini is the sign of feedback. Receiving feedback from more than just one person, place, or religion. Gemini is the sign of diversity, and each and every one of us as human beings requires this diversity of different people in different positions to receive different feedback, which is all useful. Perhaps you've heard the metaphor of blindfolded or blind men touching different parts of an elephant. One person's got the trunk, one person's got the tail. We've all got a different experience. But every single perspective is valid. This is not the time to be getting into overly heated, overly argumentative, one-size-fits-all logic. And is this a tense, angry, instinctual, what could be incredibly argumentative full moon? It is absolutely. It's a combative full moon, and I would dare say a bit dangerous. We need to be careful. We need to be slow. We need to be easy. These reactions or instincts can overspill into toxic meltdowns sooner than we may realize it. This is also a time where our own physical bodies, our own physical nature, we need extra protection in this time. We need extra consideration in this time. Mars retrograde is when things can really fall apart. It's when things can really break down. But there is a highlighted tension that can be dangerous. This full moon joins Mars retrograde on the north node of Uranus. And this also highlights here the theme, the nature, the reality of trauma. Trauma. Where have we experienced trauma? Where are we survivors? How have we coped to the past? What is our own unique form and flavor of PTSD? Because What we're trying to depart in these videos is a new perspective of reality, where we are leaving behind Pisces age. Good things happen to good people, bad things happen to bad people, so pray to the right gods, blah, 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 Santa Claus reality, right? We talked about leaving behind that paradigm. As we enter into the age of Aquarius, it's like everything is suddenly a map. We're suddenly not taking things as personally, but we're looking at dynamics. Let me give you an example. Mars can be the nature, the reality, the phenomena of anger. Anger is an instinctual, reactive, and a protective emotion. And anger is one of the emotions on the many emotions you see on the vibration chart that is extremely slandered, misunderstood, blasphemed, biased, and put down. Anger is considered wrong. Anger is considered bad, at least I should say, by many people, many confused people out there in the world. And I shouldn't just say that. There are also many victims of anger, in which case, sure, we could be uncomfortable around anger for a very good reason. By the way, did I just mention that there are victims in real life? Yes, there is. There are victims. There are perpetrators. We are all not in a big fluffy blanket of love together. Gemini is discernment, it's discrepancy, it's using your mind, it's using your brain, and we have to honor this faculty instead of putting it down and pretending that a naive, fairy-like, new age smorgasbord of melting everything in love and just saying I love you instead of acknowledging the dynamics of life is a massive blind spot and a problem for a lot of people, even so-called spiritually evolved people. Do we know the discernment? Do we know the difference between actual soul evolution and maybe a trauma response? As we're pulling out of the Pisces age into the Aquarian age, we can learn about the actual dynamics that forms consciousness. And what I'm going to let you all know is that each and every soul on the planet is a survivor of trauma in some way, shape, or form. We are all healing from PTSD in some way, shape, or form. And these traumas are a part of our evolutionary journey. Not something we have to like, not something we should tell other people that they should have to like. But on our personal healing journey, we come to a point where we recognize that even the most devastating experiences that we've had is a part of our evolution. And notice how careful I'm speaking about this, because you would never want to say that to someone in their pain or suffering, or else you'd just be a huge asshole. We don't tell anybody that they should be in a different place of their own healing other than where they authentically are. If someone's family gets murdered, we don't tell them they ought to forgive their murderer the next day. Late in that person's life, could the forgiveness of this murderer be an important part of their spiritual journey? It very well could, but it also could be in a future lifetime. So as we're entering the age of Aquarius, we're starting to realize that our consciousness is actually formed by and with traumas. And that's going to help us to shake off this naive daydream of Pisces escapism that unfortunately many souls have fallen into as a coping mechanism to escape the real life in which we are living. There is no safe walk through life is one of the challenges that we can be currently facing at this time. Therefore, the question is, how do we create safety? If we want to change, if we want to access parts in ourselves that are very deep, that are very misunderstood, that requires intimacy. And that intimacy requires safety. Okay, we're not going to go deep and open up and share all of our vulnerable places with a scary-looking stranger, right? We need at very least a comfortable appearing stranger to feel safe. and then we can open up the can of worms. Coming back to the astrology. The start of December, we saw Neptune station direct, while Mercury, Venus, and the Sun are transiting Sagittarius and square that Neptune in Pisces. So the beginning of December is actually a bit unclear. Venus-Neptune squares can be very romantic, very idealistic. They can be very enjoyable, creative, inspiring, as much as they can be misleading, delusional, over-exaggerating. So there's a drunkenness at the start of December 2022 that we can use, enjoy, integrate as a part of our creative flow, as long as we are aware that this is a drunkenness. Like how the rear view mirror says objects appear closer than they actually are. We're dealing with a bit of that disorientation at the start of December. Now things are only going to get more serious from this point forward, so I hope we got some Sagittarius magic sparkles in this year. Tomorrow, the 6th, Mercury is going to enter Capricorn, and Mercury will remain in Capricorn until February 11th of 2023. For those of you who are familiar with how planet cycles work, that's a long time for Mercury to be in Capricorn. Why? Mercury will station retrograde at the end of this month, conjunct Pluto. Okay? Venus goes into Capricorn on the 9th through January 2nd. And of course, as we all know, the winter solstice in the northern hemisphere is the moment the sun enters the zodiac sign of Capricorn, because the tropical zodiac is based off of the Earth, Sun, solar annual rhythms and seasons, as opposed to constellations, the way an unfortunately large number of people have been confused about. Okay, so things are going to get more serious going into Capricorn. It's time to get to business. It's time to do work. What do you want in the world? If you see it out there in the world, great, connect with it. If you don't see it out there in the world, great. How are we going to build that? How are we going to construct that? That's what we're talking about. See, part of what Capricorn does is it teaches us through limitation and lack. So what you don't have, you can actually be initiated into providing or giving yourself. And I know that's a bit easier said than done, but that's the state of the world right now. It's a bit of a kick in the pants time to be alive. The world's actually demanding us to get into our roles, to get into our work. As this month unfolds, it's going to lead into more action, initiation, trailblazing, way paving, standing up on our soapbox. There is an activist nature that's going to continue to come more and more alive, especially once we talk about the next new moon, which will be conjoined with Chiron stationing on the same day. Now, this week, we're talking about the second week of December 2022. We see Venus squares Ceres tomorrow. Then the Sun and Mars squares asteroid Juno, the 7th to 8th. And this brings up a tremendous tension between the need to take care of ourselves, the need for our own freedom and autonomy and spaciousness and calm, and just let me get away from you for a little bit of time so I can digest what just took place, with the need for connection and collaboration and support, community, intimacy, having our needs met, which we cannot do completely on our own. Does that mean we have to be married? Does that mean we have to have an intimate partnership? No. Do we need other people in our lives? Yes. Could each and every one of us use a therapist in an ideal world where there was enough therapists and there was enough affordability for therapists? Of course, and absolutely. The best we can do, therefore, is to work from either end, to try and get to this middle ground What this is going to invite is actually brand new. We're discarding tradition here. That's what part of this Mars retrograde is. I mean, this can even involve the changing of our sexuality, the changing of our body, all the themes of addictions, as you may have noticed. Collective theme of addictions, which is what? A coping mechanism for pain or suffering, which oftentimes exists when we are raised in trauma, when we're all swimming in PTSD to the point where we don't even notice it, like fish in water. Would it be possible that we form addictions as a coping mechanism? I'm going to present a rather radical idea here, and that is that life itself is an addiction. What is it that's not an addiction? If you go to the gym and it feels good and it's empowering, you could get addicted to going to the gym. It doesn't necessarily have to be unhealthy. When that addiction gets too high and you're spending all day, every day in the gym until you have a heart attack, then that might be unhealthy. The point here is I'm playing the devil's advocate. I'm doing what Gemini does, which is play either side. There is no one-size-fits-all reality. It's circumstantial. It depends on what side you're looking at any given thing. And you can change how you're looking at any given thing. And then that can change your overall orientation. So this is such a time. But we're breaking down these traditional ways of having ourselves fulfilled. Mars retrograde really brings up gender, sexuality. Something that I'm noticing out there in the world is that we're breaking down gender roles. Have you noticed? And the way that this is happening is completely opposite between male and female, not to disclude all of the other genders that are equally doing their own pioneering healing work. So, for women, this is an exercise of freedom. For the first time historically, women can be in their masculinity, which means feeling confident to be a leader, go in your own direction, flex your muscles, prove to the world what you're capable of, and build your empire. And this is what we see women doing. Whereas men are having the exact opposite experience. Getting in tune with our emotions, realizing that we're sad, realizing that we don't have the resources to take care of this inner feminine that we're discovering for the very first time for, many tens of thousands of years. And what's funny is that, at least in these conscious communities, I notice a lot of men are sad and lonely and are at home, which has been traditionally the role of women, because men were going out and having community with their buddies while their wives were locked at home, isolated, and taking care of the children. And it's fascinating how I notice this role reversal going on. Point is, gender's important. We need the autonomy to respect our own individual nature. And just like similarly, women need women's circles, men need men's circles, again, not to discount any of the other genders. So we need autonomy, and we need the other gender too. Why do we need the other gender? Is why I began this video in the first place. Feedback, to actually know what we're dealing with. There is only one way that future generations will be born, and that is by men and women, physically speaking, coming together. Excuse my pun. Now, again, this full moon is right on Mars retrograde, so it brings up all of the Martian themes. This, I am a multifaceted person. Like, I'm not just completely fulfilled in one place by one person. That's the nature of this Mars retrograde. We have to actually recognize how each and every one of us sort of has multiple personality disorder. We have different conflicting parts of ourselves. This is my study of astrology. is that this is what it means to be alive. This Mars retrograde is therefore the challenge and the opportunity to discover how to get these different parts and pieces put together as multi-composite beings. Okay? And I'm going to come back and speak a little bit more about esoteric Gemini, as I find this to be one of the least understood zodiac signs in this time. But first, the full moon is on Mars retrograde and the north node of Uranus. And that's why I'm speaking so much to trauma and PTSD in this particular video. 2020, for example, I shouldn't say most, but you see out there in the world of astrology, there's a lot of astrology that's just like a computer. And it's just like, beep, 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 Venus square Neptune, you're going to have this happen today. And moon's in Taurus, it's a perfect day to go lay in the grass, and it's just like the most like bit by bit mechanical and therefore unrealistic, unorganic astrology. So 2020 was not just the Saturn-Jupiter-Pluto conjunction on the south node of Saturn, Jupiter, and Pluto, which most astrologers forget about, the south node of these planets. But also, the moon's nodes then transited the nodes of Uranus. And in 2020, we witnessed a collective period of trauma. It was like the whole world went out of body. It was one of the most intense times in my life, being so sensitive to the collective, because I felt existentially alone. It's like everyone has checked out. Well, this full moon can be kind of a time wrinkle of that period. We may be looking back, remembering, shit, that was intense. And how did we cope with that? And what was going on at that time? And how is that connected to what's going on right now? What changes can I make right now to come back to my body, to come back to my center, to revitalize and re-nourish my fundamental energy centers, my fundamental libido, my fundamental will to live? Might it be possible our will to live could be challenged while we're going through this transmutation of playing the phone operator god, being, playing actual operator, moving these bits and pieces within ourselves? Could we move a piece here and it's like, oh shit, I just lost the will to live? Well, we don't end it there. We keep moving things around until everything's back online. The joy, the life, the spontaneity, the excitement, the actual desire. What do you want to do? It takes time to get all these bits and pieces together so we feel totally fulfilled. But folks, that's why we took this crash and burn. That's why we're in this period of resurrection now through springtime. And oh my God, what can be born in this time? What can be born in this time could take us through the rest of our lives. This Capricorn season ahead of us, it's time to get real. It's time to get back to business. This is going to see, as Saturn's finally pulling out of a square with the moon's nodes, this period will see new communities, new structures, new networks, new pioneers and their inventions finally making its way to the forefront. It's about time. We're supporting one another. It's not just one person does everything and everybody follows. It's not just men are the narcissistic one and women are the codependent ones now, as men are sitting home and sad and realizing how much they miss women. This isn't a failure on part of men. This is a role reversal. And we're working now from a different angle than the one that we were at before. And you know what would help us as men to work from this different angle? The feedback of women. Just the same way as women who are now driving and leading could maybe use the feedback of some men. It's nothing personal. Okay, let me talk a little bit about Gemini and the Magician, and then we'll wrap up until next time. And again, we're kind of in an in-between period. Once we get to that Capricorn new moon, I mean, it's really a get-and-go time period. And if we can catch, a little bit of slack the third week of December, catch a breather while you can, because we're going right back in there. We're getting on the assembly line and we're building this thing until it's finished. basically through the end of this year. All right. Now, I talked about how Gemini is the mind, intelligence. What Mercury, the ruler of Gemini, as a function does is break apart our surrounding environment into bits and pieces of information so that way we can know what is our environment. What is us? What are we made out of? So Gemini is about chunking. It's about separation. We know that nature is full of diversity, that diversity is inherently the music of nature. Diversity is the fabric of all existence. This is how everything is created. A fundamental separation, chunking, and then the oneness becomes something that's different than the oneness. Now, this difference from oneness is also where there is a confusion. Oh my gosh, it's not all just one big fluffy cloud. It's not all just, being swaddled and being held. There are forces of nature that are comfortable and supportive, and there are forces of nature that are incredibly destructive and unsupportive. And boy, don't people get really romantic when we talk about nature, when we talk about ancient history, when we talk about indigenous places and cultures, as if in those times and places there isn't an understanding of nature being full spectrum, aka not just good, but good and evil. And in the sign of Gemini, more than any other sign, we understand the nature of God, of the world, being one that comprises both of good and evil. So you've heard of the magician as an archetype. The magician is the soul that, just like Mercury, the god of communication, can travel both the upper and the lower realms, the underworld and the upper world. Gemini is simply the message delivery god between both. And guess what? We are all Mercuries. We all are doing this phone operator work between upper and lower realms. We've all got stuff swimming down here that needs to be addressed. And we all have inspiration. We all have gifts. We all have wonderful things to share. To the general public, an actual magician has the effect of drawing a distinctly magnetic, simultaneous reverence and revilement. Being of the least understood of humans, their relationship and embodiment with God is sharp, highly contrasting, extremely personal, and uneasy. Like how when a total solar eclipse occurs, there is a suspended moment of otherworldly uncertainty, whether it is day or night. The magician holds in one hand a paradox and in the other a question mark. They are vessels and mirrors of truth, the acceptance of what is. To such a rare purity and concentration, it greatly disturbs and challenges the deeply held beliefs of all within their sphere of influence. Their power is to provoke curiosity, but also fear without other option, for their words carry a crushing deliberacy and connection to fate. Their behavior and relations range from the apparently wicked to saint-like, not unlike the forces of nature itself. The magician distinctly uses all forces and runs from no thing, lest they unfortunately attempt to escape their own self. The verdict already determined and sealed a long time ago. Only the ethereal dust and remains following an unimaginable lightning bolt that shattered the personality and burnt into the heart of the soul the initials of the ineffable and inevitable, fractal, the pattern, the Taurian field of time and fate itself. What I would love is for now and into the very near future, each and every one of us to honor our inner magician. What that means is that each and every one of us has within our hearts the nature of good and evil. A conscious soul, a woke soul, is well aware of the evil in themselves. They're on no crusade or high horse. A conscious soul, a woke soul, is asking others for feedback. Is it possible that I have wronged you? Is it possible that I have harmed you? Could you provide me a reflection of what it is that you think I am on track with and where I may be missing the mark, where I could use some revision or adjustment? That would be a healthy world. That would be a forgiving world. That would be a world in which we could all live and be the individuals that we are. We're not all pretending that we're identical. Have you been in a relationship with somebody before? What happened? Did you merge with them? Did they merge with you? Did you become a singular organism? Or did you honor one another's boundaries and individuality? So I find the latter case rare in relationships. It's ahead of its time. But that's what we're going for. And we're talking about it more and more as we conclude December 2022. How can we create support systems of support? How can we create systems of support for the diversity of human beings and human consciousness as we step out of one paradigm and into another? And we rewrite the rule book of what it even means to be alive, what it even means to be helpful, what it even means to be a good person or a nice person or a caring person. An aware person is going to see the potential and the shadow in any human being, because that's what it means to be a human being. We don't put each other down for our nature. We learn to accept and embrace our nature, the same way as a conscious human beings, even learning to embrace the most challenging parts of themselves. This is the good work. You can access the Rasa Leela community at the link below. I am so grateful to be a part of this community. The souls that are a part of this community, and really the core of this community, is building this support system. It's not only a one-man show anymore. Last week, I got what I needed from this community just by showing up, because I was in my trauma response. I was frozen. I was unable to move. And the folks out there had my back. I didn't even have to put the word out. They are already putting out the information, the resources that we need. And my hope and desire for this community is that that capability and usefulness only steadily improves. I am so wishing the best for you. Please be protected, be safe, be careful, be slow, be easy. Last night, I got into one of the worst car accidents of my entire life. I hit a curb, lost control of the car, spun out, drove over a medium, and then got stuck in a ditch. It could have been a head-on collision. I'm an astrologer who knows it's a dangerous time. I'm someone who knows to be careful and to be easy, and still, these things do happen. I'm one of the luckiest people on the entire planet to be able to speak here to you in front of this green screen, and I hope that each and every one of you experiences that same level of provision, that you can pick yourself back up after you fall down. If you're struggling and you feel like you're having a hard time picking yourself up, please join our community. Not every human being is capable of rescuing every other human being, but there's a good group of people here. And we're all looking out for one another, and we all have each other's backs. We want that to inspire each other and send ripples out, so that way we can broadcast that and, like a light bulb, turn each other on through vaster and vaster waves as we continue to keep ourselves all centered up, so that way we can be like lightning rods of truth, care, healing, and wisdom for the rest, not only of our species, the rest of nature and the world itself. God bless you all. Wishing you the very best. I'll talk to you next time when we reach our winter solstice and our Capricorn new moon.